Record. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enterprise Room today. David, Andreas, Scott, Leandro, Paul, Jennifer, Jonas, Willow, wonderful to see you all. Looking forward to having our discussion on the topic of your CS dashboard. Ultimately, what's on it? I know this is a topic that comes across all across the board. I've spent a lot of time on this myself, both with my teams as well as my customers, and looking forward to digging in. So my name is Nils Vinya, and I will be your facilitator for today. Alex Hornbuckle is also in the room. He's going to be helping to moderate the chat. So as we're having live discussion, I encourage you to also, if you have a comment and you're maybe not able to get on camera for the speaking part, drop it in the chat. There's kind of two channels of communication there. And if you have something really important, then be sure to raise your hand and I will call on you. The way this is going to work is first we're going to solicit the questions. What are on the questions on everyone's mind with regards to your CS dashboard? And we're going to circulate and gather those questions. So if you have a question you want to share, go right now to the participants panel and click the little raise hand icon, and I will see that on the right hand side, and that's how I'm going to control who's going to come off mute and when, so that I can, as soon as I can call on you, you can unmute yourself. You can come on, you can ask your question, and then we'll move on to the next one. We'll keep it nice and orderly. After we get all the questions, then we will dig into the discussion. And I will ask for your thoughts and ideas and experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly of what happens in this wonderful world of CS dashboards and reporting metrics to other people. Ultimately, our goal is to get you to one clear takeaway from today and one thing that you can put into action. That's what, as Jay was just saying right before here, ultimately we want this to be a valuable piece of time for you. And with that, we'll get started. So the first questions here, Rick, go into participants panel, click the raise hand if you want to share a question. And then I will also call on people as we go, because I know everybody has a question on this topic, but you might not be ready to raise your hand just yet. So I would love to hear from Scott Hopper. Would you come off mute, please, and share your question?
Thanks, Niels. One of the things that I was wondering is when you pull together your dashboard, what 3 to 5 elements you started with?
So in the very beginning,
yeah.
Like as you're getting started. So Scott's question is all around getting started. What are the first 3 to 5 elements? And that's a really good point, because there's going to be an evolution of this, right? And some people are going to be beginning, some people are going to be in the middle, some will be a little bit more advanced at the end. Thank you, Scott. Okay, you can drop your hand there, Scott. Go ahead. If you have a question you want to share, go ahead and hit the raise hand icon. How about Sherry? Is it Sherry Strebnick? Am I saying that correctly? You want to come off mute and share what your question is for today?
I didn't post a question.
I know. I'm just calling on people. That's part of my job as a facilitator, because I want, as Dave was saying, this is all inclusive, right? So if you showed up here, I know there's something curious, there's something on your mind about the CS dashboard, and I want to hear it.
I, to be honest, don't particularly have a dashboard, because the way our team is structured, everything goes through my VP of client services. And he is the one in the meetings with the CRO and the CFO. So if I were to put something together, which is something that I have been thinking about, it would likely be something I would share with him, which would then have to be shared because hierarchy.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do, the one thing I do, I guess you can call it a dashboard that I use today, because we look at everything obviously by NRR. Mm-hmm. So I have a fairly complex NRR tracker that we look at. And it's set up in a way that I can filter it by quarter, by CSM, have all of those things combined. And then there's a summary page where with, some nice fancy VLOOKUPs and some other Excel magic.
So Sherry, hang on just one sec. So if, as you were thinking about potentially building something just for you that ultimately would be reported through your VP and others, that's fine. What is one question that's on your mind about the creation of that dashboard? And if you don't have one, that's okay, totally fine. But what is one question on your mind?
Outside of NRR, what would be maybe the top 2 metrics that you would want to report back to your CRO and CFO? Because we don't have a CCO.
Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. We will dig into that a little bit. All right, David Williams, please come off mute and share with us your question.
Yeah, Sherry stole mine.
Ditto.
The executive team that I report into has they have blinders on. They have kind of that tunnel vision of the financial side of the software renewal base that we steward. So we have data on that for days. And so the question I have is, success is not just about whether or not a customer renews. There are a lot of other metrics around outcomes that measure outcomes that we haven't reached that mature stage as a business to measure in any consistent way.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we round out? I feel like our dashboard is really flat, it's two-dimensional. How do we round it out? How do we make it more three-dimensional in a way that would include the outcomes, the success that our customers are seeing or not seeing, regardless of whether they choose to continue on as a customer or not? An aside there, Nils, how many of us have a customer who cancels, but who actually achieves really successful outcomes with our data? How many times do we have customers who keep on keeping on through inertia, but they're not doing anything, we can tell?
Yeah.
And so there's this aspect to our customer base that they don't ask about and we don't tell them because they don't know the right questions to ask, and we don't know how to measure what it is we would tell them about outcomes. So I have a question about how do we round out the financial, the MRR. We look at annual retention and then break it down on a quarterly basis. How do we round that out? What have some others done?
I like that. And that comment you made, it kind of helps put a visual element to it. The 2D versus the 3D. Right? The 2D is just the retention numbers. And then the 3D is all the success and outcome pieces that tell the story, really bring it to life. So I love that. Excellent question. Look forward to digging into that. All right, Courtney Greeley, would you come off mute and share your question?
Sure. And just to be clear, we're talking about executive dashboards internally, right? How are we reporting? Right. Perfect. Okay. So one of the things that we learned over the last year, it's obviously very iterative, right? So, give yourself some grace to work through, those growing pains. But what we do is on a weekly basis, we track that customer health score, at a lower level, right? So there's things that go into that. And
hey, Courtney, can I get you to hang on just 1 second? So right now we're focused just on the key questions that are on your mind. We're going to get into the discussion, and I want to hear the solutions that you've put in place that will be helpful for everybody to understand. But right now I'm most curious, as I solicit the questions of where we're going to dig into, what's the number one question on your mind when it comes to either what you're doing today or how to improve this or change it? What's on your mind?
Okay. So one question that I think that we don't have answered on our end is how to, effectively communicate that CSM to account ratio, right? That's something that we've had challenges with. So that would be my question. And I will hold my success stories for later in the discussion.
I want to hear them. I know you have some good ones, so I'm looking forward to it, but thank you very much. All right, Adam, good to see you.
Nils,
yeah, you too.
Hang on 1 sec, Adam. Go ahead, Alex.
Some great questions in the chat that are getting some traction here that I think we should bring up and talk as a group. One is just first, how often are executives engaging with your dashboards? I think that's a great question, and it's going to impact the way you structure it. And we're getting some pretty interesting questions too. I'm going to distill it down into what tools people are using for your dashboards. We're seeing a lot of Salesforce, a lot of some additional data visualization layering on top of that. Very curious. Cool. I got an interesting question about regression analysis. I'm not sure we're going to be able to dive too deep into that one, but very, very interesting questions that I think we should continue to take into the community.
Awesome. Yes, fantastic. And we can touch on those. We'll bring those into the discussion too. Thank you, Alex, for bringing those up and moderating in the chat. Adam, good to see you.
Yeah, you as well. Been a couple years. The question I have, I'm curious just about how people are sharing this across the organization. So how this is getting distributed, especially during the coronavirus, where everyone's working from home, and traditionally, if you had monitors throughout the office, and you don't have that anymore. And then also, who actually has access to this? So how transparent is the health of the renewals business, or whether it's related to adoption, whatever's on your dashboard, is that across the organization?
Cool, awesome, love it. How people are sharing this across the org, and who's got access? Excellent questions. All right, Mike Lee, would you come off mute and share, please, your question?
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. I was just curious how detailed the information or the metrics that should be on a dashboard. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but sometimes our leadership is saying, they're looking at the number of minutes on a particular call or that sort of thing. I'm curious of what best practices are about how detailed executive dashboards should be, because that's a concern.
Love it. Thank you, Mike. How detailed are the information and the metrics on the dashboard supposed to be? And we'll round it out with David Ellen, and then we'll dig into the actual conversation here. So David, why don't you come off mute and share your question?
Hey, Nils, welcome everybody. Yeah, my question is whether your dashboards are static or if they allow for drill down capability to get deeper into the metrics.
Awesome. So static dashboard is just, here's a picture, or is it a fully interactive experience? And this will get into our tools discussion that we'll have that was also coming up in the chat. Perfect. Okay. So in our beginning questions, the first area that came up in the first 3 different questions was, what are the elements that are in here? And I know all of you have some level of degree of experience with this, and probably some lessons learned and some, both good, bad, and ugly across the board. So let's take it down, and would love for you to share if you have an opinion on the top 3 to 5 elements that is in your dashboard today, and if it doesn't exist today, the things you think would be appropriate, and let's hear. So if you want to share the top 3 to 5 that you think are really critically important, either that you do today or would love to, raise your hand in the chat piece. Ziv, why don't you come off mute and share with us?
Yeah, so I'll be brief on that. I don't think that you can have 3 to 5 things, but I think that if you are starting, then what I can tell you that you should focus on is it's not only churn. So I would always look for what is the most granular piece of data, and it's how many calls CSMs has, what is the level of engagement. One of the latest things that we are looking at is number of engagements, which can be emails, incoming, outgoing, and meetings. But we also look at how many of those engagements were initiated by the CSMs to see who is more initiating versus. So it looks like it's not a very upper KPI metric, but it's actually very, very, very interesting. So I would look on that, and then for sure, the leads that CSMs create for upsells. What CSMs lead for more usage, and then churn and renewals can be very, very interesting.
Awesome, thank you, Ziv. That was fantastic, and I like the fact that you called out not just the traditional retention metrics, renewal metrics being most times lagging indicators, but the actual leading things around engagement, maybe even number of calls, number of touches, number of driven by CSMs. Very cool. All right, Courtney, now it's time to come off mute and share your, the wins, the losses, whatever you got to share. I want to hear it.
Well, what's funny, and again, I think the key question here, right, is there's going to be different stakeholders, and they're going to require different levels of details. So when we're talking about that C-suite, again, what we did is we built the metrics in a Google Sheet, but then we tie that back to a Confluence page that keeps updated. We do week by week, so you can kind of see if it's gone up or down. And that allows, from Confluence, you double click, you can go right into the details of the metrics. So for the executive piece, we report on that overall health score, which is really important. And then what we do is we map it, which is, executives really like a picture that tells a story. So we've kind of taken like what Gartner does and Forrester does about putting people on that path. And so on the one axis, we have, customers like meeting their objectives, and then also their level of happiness, right? And obviously the goal is to get them in that top right quadrant and have them be green. So that is a really nice picture for the executives to see, okay, where do we really need to focus our time? So not that people don't love green accounts, but they really want to be engaged and understand why some are at risk. And so that's been a clear picture that we've been able to give. And just some of those metrics that feed that are adoption rates, NPS, engagement, right? Are they attending our customer advisory boards, our technical advisory boards? We also add in a metric for CSM sentiment, right? Because sometimes the numbers might be a little bit skewed. And so we add that in to say, hey, this is our feeling towards the customer and how they're feeling towards us. And then just another product metric in there. And that's been really helpful and kind of been quite successful.
Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. The visual that you have on the grid with the two axes, let me make sure I got that and everybody understood what it was. Number one was the vertical axis was the customer objectives have been met. So there's some measure of whether or not that has happened. And the horizontal axis was the happiness level of the client, probably coming from NPS and customer and the CSM sentiment. Is that right? And then you actually give each one of those a score, and that is plotted on this grid, so you can see where it's at.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll share, again, I'm happy to share just as, what we've used if people want to see that visually and maybe, take it.
Love it. Yeah, post it. I would, that'd be a great thing to post in the community. Just have a, here's an example of what our grid looks like. You can anonymize the data or visual.
Yeah.
But just seeing that, like Scott was asking, like when you're just getting started, like this isn't what you just get started with, right? But as a way to visualize what's possible in the future, that's a pretty solid place to go. So thank you, Courtney, for sharing.
Sure. Yeah.
Nuwan, am I pronouncing that correctly? Apologize if I'm not.
You are indeed, Nils. Can you hear me okay?
I gotcha. Yes.
Great. So I think the ones I've used in my dashboards in the past, guys, and this is because the brand of CSI was doing was heavily renewals focused. So the big ticket item that we showed on the exec dashboard was renewals. Built out in Salesforce, your typical speedometer graph of where are we month to date with renewals, quarter to date with renewals, year to date. The other piece that we also built out was the at-risk and the usage data you'd have to pipe in some way or the other, but some degree of which customers are at risk, how much revenue is at risk, and what's being done to recover that. Items 3 and 4, if you can get it in there, would be an implementation status. So where customers are in the roll-on, or rather the onboarding process, where are they with their first value point? And then lastly, anything on support metrics, right? So those 4 things, I think, were sort of the big ticket items that we put on a dashboard.
That's fantastic, Nuwan. Thank you for sharing. So renewals, like in your case, it was in a Salesforce dashboard, the speedometer, what's at risk and what's the usage level, implementation status, support metrics, kind of give you that round thing and probably help you see, are there any gaps or glaring holes or any pieces like that?
Yeah, and with a lot of drill down, right? So an individual CSM could drill down on that for their own territory, but rolled up, that's an exec.
Good, awesome, thank you. All right, Alex Farmer, would you come off mute and share with us?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon, good morning, folks. Yes, so really like the axes that Courtney mentioned, makes a lot of sense. I've heard, won't repeat what everybody said, but I think one of the things that I'm hearing kind of about this 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional thing is similar to lagging versus leading metrics, right? A spreadsheet of how many customers have churned is interesting and the business needs to know, but the ratio for me is like 2x, 2 to 1 in terms of lagging versus leading, because my goal is to prevent churn. Yes. So some of the metrics I haven't heard yet that I've found really useful. KPI, part of my team's KPIs are the percentage of customers who have indicated a willingness to be advocates. So, this difference between kind of passive success and vocal or active success or active, it's a higher threshold that we want to aspire to. And that's something we track. We're trying to get it up to, 2/3 is kind of a healthy ratio for us. And it really drives the right behavior in QSR or executive business reviews, or even including the question on NPS surveys. trying to not just close that customer to a thumbs up, but actually get them to kind of give back and then, give that back to the sales funnel as well. So that's been a really—
Alex, let me ask one question on that. Like that, what's the cutoff point? Like, how do you say, yes, this customer is willing to do this? No, they're not. Are you asking a specific question? Are you surmising based off of where they are? How do you get to yes or no?
Yeah, good question. So firstly, for like a one-to-many approach on our customer satisfaction survey, if you give us an 8, 9, or a 10 on the NPS question, you'll get a second page, which asks if you'd be willing to do referencing.
Okay.
So that's a kind of an easy
clear.
way to close. And obviously we call them and speak a bit about it, speak more about it. In an executive business review, it's been a bit of an adjustment because I think there's maybe this kind of fear is the wrong word, but apprehension to kind of asking the reference question, and we kind of put it on a pedestal. But like, for me, the approach in an executive business review, in that conversation, you're going to ask for their feedback. If that feedback is positive, we go to the advocacy slide, which says, thanks so much for sharing. Would you be willing to share that with other people that aren't me sat in this room? And it's quite a natural evolution. So that's the way we would kind of try and close them for advocacy, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay, good.
The
I just
only
want to
other—
make sure to
Oh, go ahead.
understand how to get, I just want to make sure to understand how you get to yes or no to be able to report on that metric that you are including there. So thank you.
And then just one more metric, if I may, but before I do, David, Ellen, you mentioned that we asked in the chat, you mentioned that an 8 drives the reference question. I'm based in the UK, and Brits, I think, are a bit hesitant to give so enthusiastic 9 or 10, so we lower that bar a little bit. That's that's been my experience, at least.
Culturally specific NPS. I love it.
Sure. Or also just try to get more references. There you go.
Fair.
The only other thing that we do is just to really directly connect customer health with the executive team and this cross-functional team that's going to go look at in-life customer accounts. We split all of our red and yellow accounts by reason. So I have a metric on, sorry, I'm looking up at my other monitor, looking at the dashboard right now, but I have a metric where we will split all of our red and yellow accounts and group them by reason. So it could be product bugs, it could be service escalations, and then also sum the total ARR on that graph. So we can see the highest number of customers and the highest actual revenue impact to help executives say, wow, it looks like we really have a product bug issue for the next 3 months. We need to focus on that. And that really, I think, helps drive a leading behavior as opposed to seeing a big increase in churn 3 months later, which is a lagging behavior. So yeah, that's my contribution, but it's a great topic. I'm really passionate about it. So thanks everybody for contributing.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing your experience. Appreciate it. All right, Beth Twigger, would you come off mute and share with us your thoughts? Beth, if you're talking, I can't see you just yet. Not sure which screen you're on, but we'll come back to you. Oh, is that you? Nope. Okay, Andreas. Oh, Beth, wait, no, I see you now. I see you. Beth, hang on.
Hey, sorry.
There you are. Oh, wait. There.
Hello. Sorry,
Hello.
my headset's really misbehaving.
Got it.
But I was having a good look at Alex's opinion of Brits on NPS. So I would give that a solid 8 out of 10. So in terms of, I think this kind of covers like maybe rounding out the dashboard and also like the 3 to 5 elements. So the company that I work for, our accounts are like, they are either in or out. So if we have any churn, it's sizable. And so we're very much on like the leading focus. So we group it into kind of activity. So things like a customer success representatives, proactive calls and emails to clients. Their engagement in terms of like the number of meetings that we get with various levels of stakeholders. Then classic adoption metrics around utilization, how frequently they're using the platform, session durations, and then revenue-based, kind of classic sort of churn revenue, and then satisfaction around NPS. But also we're able to use some of our own clients' data to see how close they are to achieving their goals, because it's a productivity metric. So if they've gone up in productivity, then we're able to then say that they're more likely to be satisfied as a client.
Fantastic, Beth. That is wonderful. I mean, I love the big part of dashboard, which we're all talking through here, is just keeping it concise and keeping it specific, right? And you have each of those that have a very specific reason why you are presenting that, and there's some action that's tied to whatever that metric is. All right, so Andreas, we'll hit Andreas and then we'll move on to the next question. Andreas, why don't you come off mute and share with us your thoughts?
Sure. Is there actually a way I can share my screen?
Not right now, Andreas. So why don't you just talk us through it, and then you could post an image in the community or send a
Sure.
link in the
Yep.
chat.
So it's kind of spin off on Courtney's comments around a two-dimensional dashboard, right? What I have done is establish a baseline of my customers. This is kind of my average customer. So it's a bit different than the ideal customer, which is slightly more optimistic. And then I ranked them by like the top 25%, the champions. And these are the ones that I want to have as references, because they're not just happy because they're happy because something makes them outstanding. They have more productivity, faster onboarding, or cooler integration, whatever it is. And then basically at the bottom are also the customers at risk. Is it because of something we did? Is it because they just cannot get the act together, right? And what are we doing about those? And so that's part of my dashboard. I have something on LinkedIn, so I'll post it in the chat for anyone who wants to look into more details.
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Andreas. Awesome.
Sure.
All right, so now let's shift the conversation a little bit towards the tools. We've heard about a few of these here. We've heard Confluence, we've heard Spreadsheets, we've heard Salesforce. So I want to hear about, your experience with the tools. I see Ziv Looker would love to hear details on, what works, what doesn't, and also not only sharing what you are doing, but the things you experimented with and maybe moved on from as a way to shorten somebody else's learning curve who's going through this. So let's, raise your hand if you'd like to share about the tools that you use. If you post it in the chat, I just can't keep up that fast. So Ziv, we'd love to hear. Come off mute. Tell us about Looker.
Yeah, and again, I'll start very, very brief, and I'll say why Looker. And again, it can be another tool, but for us, Looker worked because in the end, any data point that you can bring in a SQL form, and it's available in Looker. And some people here at the one-on-one or other meetings with me, and I show them my mini Looker dashboards. And in the end, you can incorporate so many data points. So in my mega dashboard, I have all the CS metrics, but I also have my greenhouse data for hiring, and I have other metrics for everything. So it's, in the end, if you have a great ops team, it can be one analyst or two analysts, then you can have Looker is magic. And then I'm sure that you can build it with other tools, but that's what worked for us. And this is also why from the previous question in the beginning, I said that, yeah, for a small CS or a new CS organization, for metrics, that will be great. But don't fear from having lots of dashboards. In the end, you need to have a very good vision of what you want to see. But today I have a new, for example, I'm now designing a new table. And what I found is that in lots of my dashboards, the main dimension is not the CSM. It's revenue, it's engagement, it's many other things. But in that new table, I'm looking for efficiency and workload of the CSM. And now in that new table, the dimension is the CSM. And we gather all the information from all the other dashboards. And now we have the engagement that was initiated by them, how many customers in red flag alert they are managing, how many customers in the first 100 days they manage, etc. So how many MRR. And then every one of those pieces of information has a drill down.
Yeah.
That goes to another dashboard. And I think that's great.
Yeah.
Dynamic.
Dynamic.
Well, it's also a dynamic tool.
Ziv, it is, absolutely. And you've also made a really good point that you have a supporting ops team. So if you're going to think about something like Looker and going really deep with this, know that you also need some supporting resources to help you build this stuff out.
Absolutely.
It can be a little tricky For sure.
Absolutely.
Awesome work.
But again, we are in the enterprise room. So I think that, you know, for me, a rule of thumb, when I speak with startups, between the 10 to 20 CSMs, you need to have a good BI team, usually not your team. And that mark, between the 10 to 20 CSMs, I would add an analyst, even without Looker, for any manual analysis. That's a pulley. That's something you need in order for your team to be more and more efficient.
Excellent guidance, Ziv. Love it. All right, Brian LaFalle, would you come off of mute and share with us about your tool experience?
Yeah, this is a good segue because I actually work at Looker. So I've been part of the customer success team here for 6+ years into the Google acquisition. As Ziv mentioned, I mean, a lot of the dashboards and the functionality that Looker provides is a lot of that interactivity and the kind of like drill down of all these different dashboards. What we found is, and we've built all of our customer success dashboards on Looker itself. Lots of different reasons for that. As Ziv mentioned, you can bring all of your data sources together into a single place, into a single data warehouse. You're looking at NPS data, you're looking at support ticket data, feature usage information, all of that sort of stuff in a single place. And we actually tried our hardest to roll out Gainsight, Tatango, clientsuccess.com, I mean, you name it, we've tried it and demoed it, and nothing was as flexible and dynamic as needed to update our dashboards over time. So as a fast growing and hyper growth company, we needed to adjust our metrics on the fly. Going back to a professional services organization of Gainsight or Tatango was just not quick enough. So as Ziv mentioned, with 1 or 2 analysts, you can make those updates in the SQL and the look-and-feel model in real time. If we need to adjust the threshold or weighting of NPS relative to feature usage, we can adjust those for our overarching health score. The other comment I'll make is, you know, having some sort of overarching health score turned out to be fairly nebulous for our executive team to understand. Well, why is it the score of 88? So we took a different approach, right? So yes, we have the standard red, yellow, green, but we've actually broken that down into a number of different subcomponents to say, what is the sentiment health of this customer? What is the bill payment health? Have they even been paying their bills? So we get that information from NetSuite. What's the feature usage health? Are they using our product and engaging with it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The composition of which, after you bring all of these different kind of sub-factors together, rolls up into a bigger health score. But again, we wanted to make it actionable for CSMs. So the way that we did that was break it down into these kind of sub-components. That allows the executive to see, oh, I know why this customer is at risk because of this one factor. They have not paid their bill in 9 months. That's why. So that was one thing. We've tried everything. And having those kind of subcomponents to make it a little bit more actionable has really helped.
Very cool. Brian, that's fascinating. Can you share just the number of subcomponents that you have that go into that ultimately bigger one, but they're the key things like that billing health, their support ticket health? How many, are we talking 5, 10, 20?
I think right now it stands at 6.
Okay.
And again, the ones that immediately come to mind, working on new metrics, but that's all about kind of like momentum and like speed of adoption. But again, it's feature usage, it's support engagement, it's NPS, so we know how their sentiment is. It's a actual qualitative flag from the CSM. Do we, you know, hey, they just got out of a QBR with a customer, and the CSM has the ability to flag that account at risk because our champion just left and the new person is a fan of Tableau. So we take all these different facets together, and that gives us kind of that comprehensive view.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. That's wonderful to learn a little bit more on behind the scenes of Looker from the Looker CS world. So thank you. Gretchen, would you come off of mute and share with us your cool experience?
Yeah, and mine is a little more generic, but I actually worked in an IT department and built custom dashboards for clients for 5 years. Perfect. So mine is more just, please use caution when you're starting down this path, because I think everybody wants to jump to like the shiny new object, and you might not have the budget for that, and you might not have the need for that. So, you know, if you're a Google shop and you're already using Google tools, maybe Looker is the right decision for you. If you're a heavy Microsoft shop and everybody's very comfortable there, you know, maybe Power BI is the direction you want to go. And maybe if you're really kind of starting out and you have no idea what dashboard you want to build, Excel or, you know, Google Sheets or Airtable is perfectly sufficient for you. So I think it's really important to look at what are your other teams, what sales using, what is everyone else in the network using, what kinds of data do you need to get in, and do the tools that you have in-house already allow you to bring that data in? And again, you know, do you have ops people or somebody who can help you with that? And if not, don't go the route of something like a Tableau where you have to be a heavy expert user to get any functionality out of that tool. So I think it's really easy to jump to like, oh my gosh, I heard XYZ person talking about this amazing dashboard they built. But if your team's not going to use it because it's too complicated, it's useless. So I think it's really important to just settle in on what you really need and what you maybe already have and start small and build from there. Don't do the heavy investment until you've already kind of exhausted your internal tools and realize you can't do it.
Sage advice from somebody who's been building these or you worked inside an organization, building these for 5 years, 4 clients. You've seen it all. Thank you, Gretchen. Wonderful, wonderful guidance. Okay, so let's shift to another question which Adam posed, which was how are people sharing across the organization and who has access? You know, so what are the types of things, or one, how are you sharing this across the organization? Is something freely available to everybody? Are you inside of an organization that has complete transparency across all metrics, or is it siloed into certain places where you, like Sherry was talking about, report up into a VP who then reports it to some other people? Would love to hear. Sherry, do you want to share just a little bit more about your experience in who has access to some of the metrics that I know you said you weren't preparing the dashboard yourself, but are being reported about you and your team?
Sure. So like I said, our VP of client services, he's reporting not just from the retention side, which would be where I lead that effort with my team, but then also the professional services side and where they're contracted to the recognized revenue from, you know, that area. Cause they obviously, they look at it a little differently. They're time tracking to contracted services. So he's looking at really all of that, and that he's taking that to the CRO. And that's what they're looking at. So what I look at specifically, like I said, is where we're tracking in terms of just really NRR. I'm looking at retention and upgrades and downgrades.
Okay.
And I would say that my spreadsheet, it does have visibility up the chain. So it is a good, I guess it's a dashboard, but it's only looking at the metrics of NRR.
Yeah, got it. And so from a tool perspective, just dovetailing on our last topic, you are using spreadsheets to manage and report that and basically have that feed into the additional reporting that's going up the chain. Is that right?
Right. I mean, yes, a lot of this marries back with what I see in NetSuite because those teams use that. But we also have CS software. We're working on building more reporting because ideally I would like my dashboard to be in Strike Deck, which we use, so that I can see it, my VP can see it, my team can see it for themselves. And we can then, if I'm in a meeting with my CRO or anybody else, that's what I'm talking to.
Love it. Awesome. All right. So who else has a comment about how they share this inside of their organization? Who gets to see this inside of the organization? Paul, why don't you come off mute? Sarah, how are you doing this, and who's got visibility inside your org?
Yeah, we're a pretty transparent company. So you know, there's a thought that everybody has a partial ownership of the success of the company. So you know, revenue metrics, churn metrics, all that type of stuff should be accessible by anyone. We do a high overview weekly report to the company, like on all hands. But if anyone wants to dive in deeper or get more granular with the data that we present, we do that offline, or you know, whoever asks.
Yeah, fantastic. Love it. And I imagine there's a fair number of you who are in transparent environments like that. And I imagine there's a fair number of you who aren't necessarily in that transparent of an environment. Jonas, why don't you come off mute and share with us how you are handling this inside your org?
Yeah, thanks for calling on me. So I would say we're pretty low on the data maturity path. So we use a combination of, we have Gainsight, but we've mainly adopted Gainsight as a CSM workflow and organization tool. We haven't been able to use the reporting functionality because we can't get internal alignment and resources to plummet with the product utilization data we would like. So what I do for my dashboards is I basically use Excel to bring in, you know, it's a great equalizer. It's very manual, but it's an equalizer. So you can go wherever the data source is for whatever the metric is you want. and you build a standardized report in Excel, which is what I do. And so the way that we share this across the organization is we just have this roll-up methodology where individual contributors roll up insights. So CSMs will roll up insights to their managers. Managers collect those insights, distill them, roll that up to the director level. Directors do the same up to the VP level. And then monthly, the VPs go through all of those insights across their organizations. And that's done through a slide presentation. So they all contribute to a collective slides. They review them before the meeting, and then they go in and align on what the priorities are or urgencies in different areas of the business. But, I think we would love to get to a point where we're more transparent, and the accessibility of that is more grassroots. But, we're just unfortunately not there yet from a resourcing standpoint.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I love the just the systemization of that and the roll-up methodology that you described. Makes the ultimate number one thing of clarity so important, right? This is exactly what you got to provide by this point in time, because it goes here, 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 and here, and everybody's got to make decisions based off of it.
The one challenge is it's quite anecdotal. It's whatever, at each of those levels, it's whatever that leader happens to think is important, and it's not, so there's going to be holes in what you're providing. So
good. Okay, awesome. Wonderful. Brian, did you have another comment on this one? Did you want to share, or was that from before?
Yeah, just following up on the comment about the roll-ups, right? So we have a very similar approach, but we have, all the way down to like the customer lookup dashboard, which is the most granular view of a single customer, a CSM pulse, which is kind of a view of a CSM's portfolio, a manager pulse, director pulse, regional pulse, and then we have the looker pulse, which actually takes a lot of the revenue metrics from the customer success group as the key metrics that we have to report out to the business. So again, this is fully transparent. It's all web-based. Anybody in the company can go to any one of these dashboards at any level of granularity. But because we've built some automation and tooling in Looker itself, some of that information gets emailed off. So we'll get a weekly recap. That's a kind of a PDF snapshot of the dashboard, send off to people's inboxes, which they can search for in Gmail. And then we also ping those reports weekly into Slack. So for regional team meetings, things like that. So again, we really want to increase transparency, ensure that we know what all other departments are working on. And you can zoom into any other department, product or support, and see all of their key metrics as well. So we try to be as transparent as possible.
Love it. Very cool. Ed Powers, oh man. So I know you probably posed the regression question, but I'm curious, in your prior experience, like what was it like in the reporting up in your companies to the other executives and other situations? Who had access to the information? Was it completely transparent? Was it limited to a select few? Were you hamstrung by any technology challenges? Tell us a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, thanks, Nils. What I've done in past lives multiple times is to use an enterprise-wide method, kind of what Brian was talking about, where you have these cascaded metrics. And if you build those out, every manager in the organization has a set of metrics on a dashboard. And the closer, the more frontline, the lower level, the more tactical. The upper level, it becomes more strategic and economic. And if you get those metrics working correctly, you actually, you create a system where you do monthly reviews and you roll these up. And you can identify trends and issues at lower levels, and they automatically cascade up to the senior executives. So the dashboards are really important if they're constructed well and you can interconnect them. It's very powerful. But where it really comes up is doing the roll-up of by departments up through the organization so that you flag the red signals. You talk about corrective action, you talk about process improvement, you talk about needs. And when you get that really working, then the whole organization is very sensitive to changes, doesn't overreact or underreact to what's going on in the environment.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your extensive experience. Catherine McGrath, would you mind coming off mute? And haven't heard from you yet. We'd love to hear your experience and how do you share this information across your either executive team or inside your company?
So we like to think we're very transparent. I've been there 4 months at Reich, so we're work management software. And every week we have a bit of a international all hands, and everybody shares everything. So from account management to solutions architect to PS to, you know, it takes 30 minutes and it's pretty good fun actually, normally with a beer. And that's every Friday, and we go through our numbers for the week and how we're tracking, and even down to individual names on sales. The CSMs are a little bit more private about that stuff, but we do show our metrics in terms of MRR and retention, etc. And then in terms of, that's kind of in a PowerPoint plucked from our different systems, but the systems that we use are Strike Deck, Tableau, Google Sheets. Accuracy can be fun on that stuff, but in general, we would do our best with the Strike Deck, and we're kind of not early adopters, but it's early for us, and there's quite a few teething problems there. So we're still working out those wrinkles.
Fantastic. Thank you, Catherine, for sharing. All right, everybody, you saw the little pop-up come up. Time to head back into the main room. I will see you there. Love to connect with you on LinkedIn. I'll drop my stuff in the chat. But thanks for a wonderful discussion, and I'll see you back in the main session.
Still having a few more roll in here. I'll make sure I can get our moderators in here as well. Okay, cool. Looks like we've got Sarah and Nils. So just like the last few weeks, Sarah and Nils, it'd be great to go around and hear just, you know, maybe one or two questions that you feel like you were able to answer and field during the session, and then one actionable takeaway for the group. So Nils, why don't we start with you, and then we'll let Sarah go. But Nils, maybe come off mute and let us know some of those questions that you guys were able to tackle in the enterprise room, and then one kind of takeaway or action you feel like the group left with.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, we had some fun in the group, and we covered a number of different areas. You know, some of the key, most important questions on everyone's mind when it comes to this in the enterprise space were, what are the metrics? Like, what are the things that are on the dashboard? I'm sure this is probably similar in the SMB space, but key question, like, what are they? And how deep do you go with these metrics, right? That coupled with who gets visibility into these things in your organization, and how do you share this information across the organization? Those were some of the key topics that we talked about as a way. So on the core metrics side, you know, everybody knows that there are the lagging indicators of the retention and renewal and upsell and those things that just happen at one point in time. And we had a really interesting comment about going from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional. So 2-dimensional kind of being a visualization of just the revenue implications, and then 3-dimensional being all the other things that go into the leading indicators to ultimately get to that point. So it was a discussion around how to round out the health score or round out the other metrics on the dashboard to tell a bigger story. So that was a key piece. Courtney also shared in ours, she had use a grid where on the x-axis was the customer objectives met, and there was a measure comprised of a number of factors. And then on the y-axis was the happiness, which again was a measure comprised of another set of metrics. And then the plotting of those will give you 4 quadrants on a graph, and is a great way to visualize where customers are and where the bulk of the effort needs to go. So thought that was really interesting. On the tools side, we had got some good details of Looker from Ziv on how he's using it. But then we also, from Brian, he runs CS at Looker. So we got even more details on how Looker can be used. And it wasn't this wasn't a promotion for Looker, but it was just a great way to think about how to drill down and create a methodology around going from, an individual level to a team level to a director level to a VP level in a systematic way that could then be shared with other people. That, I think, was the ultimate takeaway, was to be able to create some form of roll-up methodology that would be systematized. Whatever tool or function you use is going to work for your situation, but that was really the key point.
Awesome. I'm sure Brian will start looking for those commissions coming in soon. Sarah, how about you? Maybe a couple of a couple of quick questions that you feel like we're able to answer, and then a key takeaway for that group in the SMB room.
Sure. I think a lot of synergy between the SMB and the enterprise room around just what are the metrics, right? We had one question is, what is the one metric you can't live without? And you know, it came back to that net dollar retention, net revenue retention for everyone, which again spans this entire community on what we really focus on. But then it was digging deeper. How can so that's great, but how does that, maybe that metric is the one that drives our dashboard. And David shared a really interesting equation, David Jackson, on how he's looked at it, right? So activity by quality equals outcomes, right? And really helping using that equation to drive renewals, drive retention, and kind of get you in the driver's seat. So maybe that in conjunction with Courtney's Magic Quadrant could really help us take the quantitative mixed with the visualization, and that could be an interesting mix, right, for everybody. I think the other main point of our conversation was, okay, so we're focused on this SMB area. A lot of us have this, you know, vast 700 to 1 metric was one of our participants, and I forget her name, so I apologize. But you know, how do you dissect that and translate that one-to-many model to your executives and your boards? And it was less around And so I thought that was really important as many of us look to focus on and how do we support that lower end of our business.
Yeah, I think there's I'm sure Brian from Looker can probably give us an entire presentation on how to tell a story with data. You know, I think that's that's a job in and of itself. You know, as business analysts is becoming such a prominent figure, and you start thinking about, you know, the presentation of data, the story, the narrative that goes along with it really ends up being a large part of how people perceive what you're saying. I'm sure Ed Powers is really into this conversation as well. I know he loves to look at data, statistical analysis, making sure that we've got some of those correct processes in place as well. So great, love the discussion today. Hopefully you guys all got some value out of this. I think I already sent out the survey, or I should have, so you guys should have that. We're gonna start asking for some feedback now that we have 2 moderators. We'll start asking for some feedback too, so that we can always help our facilitators, you know, hopefully improve their skills as they facilitate rooms. So please take a look at that. We'll be back next week as usual. I will send out an email. We're going to probably hopefully have a recap for tomorrow, and then we will have a topic picked for next week. We're going to try and start doing topics about a week ahead of time to give people to prepare, give you an opportunity to start thinking about questions and discussion points that you might want to bring to the table. And then as Jay mentioned earlier in our survey today, we're going to be asking if there is anybody in the group who would like to help us along our diversity and inclusion discussion. So if you want to play a part in that for Gain, Grow, Retain, please mark that in the survey, and we will look to follow up with that group and hopefully start to take some action in our small part of the CS community. We like to end these on time, so 12:30 Eastern time. Hopefully you guys had a great day and appreciate all of the support. We'll see you guys again next week.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.